Hi, it's Anne. Would you like to make these wasted pieces of fabric into this beautiful collaged journal cover using this dissolvable fabric? Join me and see how I made it. Now I'm going to use multicoloured fabrics, bits and pieces that I've had lying around, and I've just kept them because I know, I like to make this fabric every now and then, and I need enough to fill my little pillow or the case I've made to make the journal cover, because I don't want any gaps in the fabric. Now you could use one colour or one colour with different shades, so different shades of green or pinks. Now if you want the back of it to look plainer, you can line the back of your case with just a plain piece of cloth, and you'll see when I sew it how it'll come together, and then the inside of your journal, for instance, would be plain colour. Okay, well, I purchased this dissolvable fabric from eBay a few years ago now, and I got quite a lot on there, and you can just cut off the amount you want. I think you can get wider pieces as well, and what it allows you to do is to use bits and pieces of fabric so it holds them together while you stitch, and then you can literally dissolve this in water and you're left with the pieces that you've stitched. I've got this, it's rather funny, it's a shape of an egg. I used this to make it, but you could see that you could make rather lovely lace fabric as well. So this was all cotton, bits of cotton that I had left over, and I literally put all the bits and pieces inside this, stitched with my machine, and then put this in water and it dissolves away and you're left with the fabric. Now you don't have to use a sewing machine, you could hand sew it. Be very time consuming, but it could be done. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut off enough. I want to make a journal cover, just going to be a small notebook type journal. So I'm going to, got to be careful not to get this wet, of course, because it will just disappear. So I'm going to cut off a piece about that size, and then I'll take it to the sewing machine, and I'm going to, I don't need to stitch down that side because it's folded, but I'll stitch down this side and this side, leaving an opening to put my bits of fabric that I've cut up. One other thing, you have to be a bit careful with the needle on your sewing machine. This can get quite sticky when the sewing machine needle gets hot, so you can often need to wipe your needle, especially if you go on then to sew on other fabrics. Okay, well, I've sewn the edges, not without problems. It is very tricky fabric to work with, and in the end what I did was I put some paper underneath just to steady it through the machine. And if you're at all worried about using it on your machine, then hand sewing will be fine, so I would stick to that. But you do have to have a lot of patience with this if you want to try it. Okay, right, I'm going to put some of the fabric bits in now. I've got my opening here, so I'm going to pop the fabric in to my little pillow. I may need to cut up some more. into all the corners. So now I'm just going to get a needle and thread and stitch along here by hand. It's fairly tough fabric, but it's flimsy at the same time to work with. Okay, what I've also done is I'm going to put this piece of fabric on the back just so that I can have a right side and a wrong side. Now this isn't a quick project. It does take time because what I am going to do, I've got some gold coloured thread. I'm just going to hand stitch just little stitches here and there. These will all get, this is like a glue when it gets wet, and this will all get stuck together. But I'm just putting some stitches in, so this will take a little while. You could sit and watch the TV and do it, listen to a podcast. And this, I mean, I rather like the random stitches on the other side, but if you don't like it, you can always add another piece of fabric. It's a nice challenge, and it's nice to do something different, isn't it? And you could just, I mean, I'm doing quite a large piece here. You could do little squares just to make pockets or something in your journals, or little, I've made a little purse before. So it doesn't matter if you leave your cotton threads, because they'll all merge into the glue, as it were. And think of it as a collage of fabric. And if you're not happy with where you've placed things, you can always tear open the fabric and reposition. Okay, well, I've finished loosely tacking the fabric down, and some people just pin it, but I don't like using pins with my machine, so that's why I've just tacked it loosely so it just stays in place. Now you could go on, if you don't want to use your machine, and spend, you know, some time putting stitches in all around, making sure the fabric is stitched to this glued area, but I'm going to use the machine because I've used it like that before. Now there are a couple of ways you can do that, but it does really require altering some things on your sewing machine just to make it easier, because if you use the normal foot on your machine, it does get tangled up in this dissolvable fabric. Believe me, I've been there. Now you can use a hoop to flatten things, and so you would put your hoop on this one. Probably isn't quite big enough, so I'd have to open it a bit more because I'm not going to use a hoop, and then I've got larger ones, and then this would be flat then inside this area, and you'll be able to work it through the machine that way, and it keeps this area very flat and it's easier to manage really. But because I want to do the whole area, you know, it would mean moving the hoop around, and if you were doing a small piece that would be ideal really. So you've noticed I put an extra piece of fabric on there because this fabric I put on was catching in the machine, so when I've tried it. So I've just put this piece on because it's a bit smoother. I'm going to cover that as well. So we'll go over to the machine and then see the next stage. Okay, well, with my machine off, I've unscrewed the screw from the foot, and taken the normal foot off, and then I've got this embroidery foot to put on, and it just clamps around the bar, and then I screw this on. You can just see the foot there. I've got gold thread in. The other thing I have to do is, I think you can just see the foot dogs, they're called, and I've got a button on the back here, and if I move the button to the right, it brings the foot dogs up. If I move it to the left, it pushes them down. So that's the foot dogs lowered. You can see sometimes it's easier to do it by hand. Now, if you haven't tried this technique before, I would advise not to use the dissolvable fabric to start with. Just get a plain piece of fabric and try it out first. I have a speed dial on my sewing machine. I have it going fairly quickly. So off we go. It's just a matter of guiding the thread around. So it's like drawing with the sewing machine, but you are very close to the needle, so as I said before, it's probably worth having a hoop, because you can hold the hoop and guide the fabric through, and it's much safer that way until you're used to it. And there are lots of YouTube videos on how to use this technique. I would do a lot of research first. Okay, well, we'll get on to our project. Now pop it under, put the foot down. Now the dissolvable fabric does catch sometimes, but don't worry about that. It's going to dissolve into the fabric, so you won't notice that at all. So I'm just going to alter the stitch a little bit, make it a bit larger. Now with the foot dogs down, you have to move the fabric around. As you can see, it bunches up a little bit, so if you had a hoop on, it wouldn't do that, but so I'll have to keep stopping and moving it around. Right, here we go. Have to be very careful with this embroidery foot on, because you can get your fingers very near the needle. Just going to move that over a bit. Now this is called free motion sewing. It's normally much easier than this, but having this dissolvable fabric on top does make it more difficult. I'm going to carry on. I'm going to cover the whole of this with stitches, and then I'll come back. Okay, so I've stitched over most of the fabric, and this stage it looks a bit of a mess. I think all collages go through that stage, don't they? And if you look on the other side, this is why I've put the fabric here so that you can see. And I use red cotton. You can see how I've gone all over, and I've tried to go around the edge as well, so that, and there's some blue cotton here as well, so that all the little bits of fabric are included. But as I say, you could do this by hand, but it would be very time consuming. Okay, well, this next stage is where the magic happens, and we've got to get some water, so I'll just get prepared. Okay, well, I've got a bowl of water and a towel ready. I'm going to put the cloth in there to dissolve the fabric. Now, depending on how stiff you want the fabric, depends on how long you leave it in the water. So if you want it to be, you know, quite a sturdy fabric, as some people make boxes out of it and little bowls, then you don't leave it in the water so long. So it's sort of warm water. Pop it in. And it just dissolves away. And then all the colours come back. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll just roll it put the bowl to one side, and then I'll wrap it in a towel, and then we've just got to let it dry before we can cut it to the shape we want. Okay, so I'll leave it there for now, let that dry, and then I'll be back. So here we have it, a beautiful collage of fabric all sewn in and ready for a book cover. That's what I'm going to make with this one. So I'm going to, there's lots of bits that haven't been caught, but I quite like that, gives it the texture. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold these pieces in just around the edge, and the top and the sides, and then I'm going to put a cover on the back and stitch all round the edge, because I want to make a little notebook cover or journal cover with a pocket. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back with the finished article. So here is my journal cover complete. It's measuring about 14 centimetres by 17. So it's a nice size, and it's got a lovely colourful look to it, with all the stitching as well, the gold thread, and a lovely texture. So on both sides, I'm really pleased with it. I've put a nameplate there, ready for whatever I'm going to use it for. And then inside, I've just lined it with this fabric, which was quite easy to do. And it's quite a nice fabric. It's got like big woolen stitches going through it. And then I made a pocket before I added it to the back with a little bit of mauve fabric just over the top, and a nice big button, and I put a couple of tags in there. And then I just had some leftover pages from a journal kit, and I've made a very small, it's a mixture of, this is Halloween and seashore, so it's a mixture of and Dreamer's kit, mixture of pages that we have, and then some tea stain pages, and I've just put a loose tie around and tied it at the back there just with a knot. I might put a charm or a bead or something on there later on. And then on the other side I flipped this over because it was quite long and made a pocket here, and then I've got a tag in there. So there we have it. From those little scraps of fabric we've made a rather unique journal cover. You could make lots of things from it. I've made purses before, and it's a lovely fabric collage. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, please come back and join me for some more crafting and sewing projects. Bye for now, everyone.